Welcome to another DragonLance Saga Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons episode. This is the 10th episode in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide series. It is me, Shamfrost, Colt IV, and my name is Adam. Dragonlance came out of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, so I thought it would be fun to read the core rules aloud and discuss them with a live audience. I'd like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga YouTube members and Patreon patrons and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron. You can even grab Dragonlance media using my affiliate links in the description below. We are picking up right where we left off, siege engines and devices of war. Occasionally, the need to handle various siege equipment and artillery will arise. While the conduct of large-scale battles is not a subject for this work, the one-to-one use of such machines can be dealt with easily herein. So I'm going to actually have to show you this because I don't know how to do this without showing you. And my stupid avatar's in the way. So I'm just going to have to describe it. So engine or device, and then the cost. So you have ballista at 75, catapult heavy at 200, catapult light at 150. And then cauldron, well, I can show you this one here. There. Now that my big head's out of the way. You got the cauldron suspended, gallery covered, hoist, mantle, movable ram, etc., etc., etc. First of all, welcome, Dragon High Lord Mr. Snuggles. Maybe the least fearful Dragon High Lord name, but appreciate you nonetheless. Corey, how you doing, man? Thanks for tuning in. All right, so you can see the basic siege equipment there. Ballista is a war engine which fires a heavy spear-like missile. The cost of the missile for a ballista is comparable to javelin cost. Catapult, an engine operating by tension or torsion, which hurls heavy missiles, combustibles, rocks, dead animals, barrels of sewage, etc., can be used as ammunition. Cauldron suspended, a huge iron pot for boiling or flaming liquid. It's suspended on such a manner so as to allow it to be tipped easily in order to spill its contents on attackers. Gallery covered, a sometimes movable construction, typically a heavy timber frame with green hides protecting the wood. It has a double roof, one peaked to shed missiles and liquids. It's used to provide cover for attackers operating against a wall. Width is 12 feet high, wide, and 20 feet long. Hoist, a frame with fulcrum and lever, the lever equipped at one end with a basket which can hoist up to 4 attackers to a height of 30 feet to assault a construction. Mantlet, movable, a wooden wall with wheels for movability and a slit for archery. It is typically 6 feet wide, 8 feet long, and several inches thick. The mantlet is slanted backward at a slight angle. All of these, you can actually use this really well as inspiration for gnomish devices. And all you have to do is say, okay, a hoist. Well, that's just like a gnome flinger, basically. You know, a frame or with fulcrum and lever, the lever equipped as one end with a basket. Of course, that, a catapult is a gnome flinger too. But a hoist would just lift them up. So it'd be, the opposite direction of a gnome flinger. And, like the ram and stuff, just imagine how an over-engineered version of that would be, and you suddenly have a gnome device. So the ram, a movable gallery equipped with a heavy log suspended with 2 roof beams by chains. The log is shod in iron and used to batter through defenses. Ram catcher, a fork or hook of iron on a large long pole. It is lowered by defenders to catch and hold a ram or sow at work on a wall. The defenders then raise the catcher to disable or break the ram. I've never seen one of those. That's kind of cool. Hey, Ryan, thanks for tuning in, man. Siege tower, a mobile wooden tower, typically a beam frame with slats and green hides to protect it from fire. It is 16 feet square at the base, 40 feet high with a 10-foot square parapet at the top. At 30 feet height, there is a drawbridge, 10 foot square. The lower portion is for locomotion. A ladder leads up the back or interior to drawbridge deck and upper parapet with 2 intermediate floors. You see this in every type of siege film, but probably best shown was in Lord of the Rings. Sow, a pick screw device, otherwise conforming to the ram for use against stonework. A Rewitty 6. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but thank you so much for tuning in on Twitch. All right, Trebuchet, a large siege engine which fires very heavy missile loads a great distance by means of lever and counterpoise. War Machines Fire Tables. One of the tables below to determine 2-hit probabilities. Use the table below. Whenever siege engine war machines fire. This I can show you as well because my big head's not over it. And you can see the ballista, range, damage, rate of fire, crew, etc. All the way from rams, so trebuchet, and everything. Pretty cool. Damage possible only if victim is directly in front of the boom device for the ram pick or screw. Range is the distance from the engine to the target creature. The trajectory of ballista missiles is basically a flat 1, while those from catapults and trebuchets have a high arc. Minimum range basically reflects the arcing trajectory. Now, whenever we're talking about range, because it's always presented in inches, in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, range inside of a structure is in terms of feet. So you'd have to times it by 10. So a 10-foot or a 10-inch minimum range would actually be 100 feet minimum range. But outside, and all of these war machines, of course, would be used outside, it's in yards. So times 10. So 15 inches would be 150 yards. So you can tell that firing outdoors, you're able to leverage arc, from, like imagine a bow, for example, and aiming it a little higher so it goes a little higher, but it also goes further. You can't really do that in a dungeon, for example. All right, so minimum range basically reflects arcing trajectory. The range for rams and sows is only the maximum swing of the boom and indicates the proximity of the engine housing to target, normally a construction. Damage, of course, variable is self-explanatory. Rate of fire can be achieved only with at least a minimum crew. If less than a minimum crew of crewmen are available, then rate of fire drops to at best 50% of normal. The maximum number of crew enables a ballista to double its normal rate of fire. All other engines gain nothing except less chance of dropping below minimum requirements for normal rate of fire by having crew above minimum numbers shown. Hit determination, artillerists must operate all missile engines in order to allow them a chance to hit. You may, at your option, allow fighters to opt to learn various artillery engines in lieu of normal hand weapons. The level of the crew chief determines the chance to hit, i.e. if a 0-level fighter, then the first column, if a first or second level, then the second level, etc. All targets, regardless of actual armor class, are considered as armor class 0 for purposes of to-hit determination, except ballista targets, which are always considered to be armor class 10 if exposed to sight. If a direct hit is scored, determine damage according to target size. I think this is clearly because you can see these massive constructs firing weapons, missiles at you. So if you see a cannonball, I'm sorry, not a cannonball, but we could say a cannonball from a catapult, you're going to see that well ahead of time. So you can easily move out of the way. And so it makes total sense that your armor class would be higher, well, in this case, lower, because that's how it works in AD&D, harder to hit, basically. All right, so direct fire machines are ballista, mangonels, and scorpions. Indirect fire machines are catapults, onagers, and trebuchet. Adjust the base to hit by using the following tables of modifiers. Roll d20, and if the number equals or exceeds the adjusted base number, a hit has been scored. So I'm going to show you this real quick. So you can see the target movement bonus and penalties, target size, weather conditions, type of fire, all that stuff. And this stuff, again, this isn't meant to be focusing on mass combat. This is just if an individual in a conflict that you're running happens to run across these, or some NPC or, henchmen, for example, are operating them, then you have this to lean on, but it's not meant to be a mass combat system by any means. If a catapult or trebuchet miss occurs, go to the grenade-like missiles section to find where the missiles struck. Misses will always pass over to the left, to the right, or fall short of the closest appropriate part of the target, even if this causes the missile to fall short or exceed the minimum or maximum range restrictions. Also noted in the grenade-like missiles section, missiles from small catapults are considered to be of 1 foot diameter, those from trebuchets 2 feet. Ballista missiles are akin to spears. Field of fire, the arc of fire of missile engines, is as follows. Ballistas, 45-degree left or right. Catapult heavy, 15-degree left or right. Catapult light, 30-degree left or right. And trebuchet, 10-degree left or right. Intervening objects will not be likely to interfere with the flight of an arced missiles from catapults or trebuchets unless they impose themselves near the engine or the target. Thus, a trebuchet could arc its missile over a 40-foot high wall, which was more than 6 inches distant from it, and less than 6 inches from the target. As ballista missiles are on a flat trajectory, objects between the engine and the target will interrupt the flight path of these missiles. Cover. Target creatures who can be seen only partially, or which are totally unseen, cannot be hit by catapult or trebuchet missiles in the normal manner. A target area must be named, and the grenade-like missiles determination is then used to find where the missile actually hits. Ballista fire is not possible when target is unseen. If they are partially visible, use the missile fire cover and concealment adjustments. Siege damage, the damage caused to constructions by the various siege engines, as well as that caused by various monsters and spells, is detailed under siege attack values. And that is the chart that we're going to be showing next. Siege attack values on the right there, you can see Bigby's clenching fist. Its damage compared to like a catapult missile, or a golem, or a giant, or a ram, or a treant even. That's pretty cool. I never would have looked in this section for treant damage. But this is AD&D. Don't ask questions. All right, soft stone includes fire, brick, limestone, sandstone. Hard rock is granite and similar material. Additional attack forms. Mining assumes that a tunnel will be driven under a construction, shored up, filled with combustibles, and then fired so as to burn out supports. If successful, this will breach a 10-foot wide section of curtain wall or cause 10 points of damage to other sorts of constructions. Sapping assumes that workers under protection of a gallery, for example, are able to dig away the earth or stone. This mode of attack is slow. To represent it, give it the damage done by a sow, but on a per turn rather than per round basis. It's important that, and remember, turns are 10 minutes. Rounds are, 10 seconds? I don't know, 6 seconds? It is 6 seconds. It is important that a reader understand that all values are representative only. The entire process of siege warfare would prove interminable in a campaign, so it has been speeded up here to force sallies and counter-attacking or the fall of the fortress. Oh, cool. Check this out. We have construction defense values. Let me see. So Barbican, Bartizan, Battery, Plinth, Battlement, and it's basically the defense value or hit points of that object, which is pretty important when you have things destroying it. Siege engines and devices of war defense values, and you can see the defensive point value for these different objects. I can only assume this is like an armor class, because I haven't seen anything saying that it's not. So we're going to go with that. All right. And that is the end of that section. So let's get into the next section. Of course, this requires some typing. Conducting the game. That's not what I wanted to do. That's what I want to do. Conducting the game. Rolling the dice, and control of the game. In many situations, it is correct and fun to have the players dice such things as melee hits or saving throws. However, it is your right to control the dice at any time, and to roll dice for the players. You might wish to do this to keep them from knowing some specific fact. You also might wish to give them an edge in finding a particular clue, e.g. a secret door that leads to a complex of monsters and treasures that will be especially entertaining. You do have every right to overrule the dice at any time if there is a particular course of events that you would like to have occur. In making such a decision, you should never seriously harm the party or a non-player character with your actions. Always give a monster an even break. Examples of dice rolls which should always be made secretly are listening, hiding in shadows, detecting traps, moving silently, finding secret doors, monster saving throws, and attacks made upon the party without their possible knowledge. There will be times in which the rules do not cover a specific action that a player will attempt. In such situations, instead of being forced to make a decision, take the option to allow the dice to control the situation. This can be done by assigning a reasonable probability to an event and letting the player dice to see if he or she can make that percentage. You can weigh the dice in any way so as to give their advantage to either the player or the non-player character, whichever seems more correct and logical to you while being fair to both sides. This is how we played for years. It was always like, oh, you want to do that? And there's no rule covering it? All right, call it high or low. And on a percentile dice, we would just roll. And if it gets over whatever the number the DM was thinking, then they were successful, basically. Now and then a player will die through no fault of your own, or his own. He or she will have done everything correctly, take every reasonable precaution, but still the freakish roll of the die will kill the character. In the long run, you should let such things pass, as the player will kill more than one opponent with their own freakish rolls at some later time. Yet you do have the right to arbitrate the situation. If you could rule that the player, instead of dying, is knocked unconscious, loses a limb, is blinded in one eye, or invoke any reasonably severe penalty that still takes into account what the monster has done, it is very demoralizing to the player to lose a care-forward player character when they have played well. When they have done something stupid or have not taken precautions, let the dice fall where they may. Again, if you have available ample means of raising characters from the dead, even death is not too severe. Remember, however, the constitution-based limit to resurrections. Yet one die roll that you should never tamper with is the system shock roll to be raised from the dead. If a character fails that roll, which he or she should make him or herself, he or she is forever dead. There must be some final death, or immortality will take over, and again the game will become boring because the player characters will have 9+ lives each. Handling troublesome players. Some players will find more enjoyment in spoiling a game than in playing it, and this ruins the fun for the rest of the participants, so it must be prevented. Those who enjoy being loud and argumentative, those who pout or act in a childish manner, ironically this is a game for children, when things go against them, those who use the books as a defense when you rule them out of line, should be excluded from the campaign. Simply put, ask them to leave, or do not invite them to participate again. Hear, hear. Peer pressure is another means which can be used to control players who are not totally obnoxious and who you deem worth saving. These types typically attempt to give orders and instructions even when their characters are not present, tell other characters what to do even though the character role they have had nothing to do with that of the one being instructed, or continually attempt actions or activities their character would have no knowledge of. When any such proposals or suggestions or orders are made, simply inform the group that there is no longer possible under any circumstances because of the player in question. The group will then act to silence him or her and control undesirable outbursts. The other players will most certainly let such individuals know about undesirable activity when it begins to affect their characters and their enjoyment of the game. That's kind of brutal. Strong steps short of expulsion can be an extra random monster die, obviously rolled, the attack of an ethereal mummy, which always strikes by surprise naturally, points of damage from blue bolts from the heavens, striking the offender's head, or the permanent loss of a point of charisma, appropriately, from the character belonging to the offender. If these have to be enacted regularly, then they are not effective and stronger measures must be taken. Again, the ultimate answer to such a problem is simply to exclude the disruptive person from further gatherings. That's hilarious. Integration of experienced or new players into an existing campaign. A viable campaign is likely to suffer some attrition as it progresses, with players dropping out for one reason or another and new participants coming into the campaign milieu. Some of these newcomers will be experienced players from other campaigns and have special characters which they wish to continue with. Other experienced players will have no characters, but they will have useful knowledge of the game which puts them apart from true novices. Finally, there will be the totally uninitiated participant, those who have only a vague idea of the game or have absolutely no information as to what it's all about. These three types of new players will have to be integrated into a campaign which could be in nearly any state of maturity, with the majority of players being low, middle, or high level. To accomplish a smooth transition, I suggest that the most applicable form of those given be followed. Transferring player characters from other campaigns to yours is appreciated by the participants coming into the milieu, as they have probably spent a good deal of time and effort with their characters, and a certain identification and fondness will have been generated. You can allow such integration if the existing player character is not too strong or too weak for your campaign and otherwise fits your milieu with respect to race and class. The arsenal of magic items the character has will have to be examined carefully, and it is most likely that some will have to be rejected. If several of such player characters are coming into your game, or at the same time, they can actually be of lower level than the balance of participants as long as they cooperate and adventure together rather than with others until they have approached parity with the group. If the character or characters of the new participant or participants are too powerful for the campaign, the players will have to accept the fact and develop some new characters. However, it is not wrong to let them know that some future time might see a state of maturity which will allow the joining of the new characters with their old as cooperating equals or as leader and henchman. Experienced players without existing characters should generally be brought into the campaign at a level roughly equal to the average of that of the other player characters. If the average is 4th level, for example, an average die or d4 plus 1 can be rolled to find a level between 2 and 5. This actually works well even if the average experience level of the campaign is 5th, 6th, 7th, or even 8th, especially when the averaging die is used. If the experience level is above 8th, you will wish to start such newcomers out as 4th level or higher level. After all, they're not missing out on anything, as they have already played beginning character roles elsewhere, and they will not have to be virtually helpless and impotent characters in your campaign, as you give them a substantial level to begin with, 4th, 5th, or 6th, for example. You might be in a position to take a different approach if there are several experienced newcomers in your campaign by adopting the method given below for the complete neophyte. The inexperienced player should be allowed to join the joy of going on a dungeon adventure as a neophyte. You will recall how much fun it was when you didn't really know what was going on or which monster was which or how to do anything, but loved every second of it. Throwing a green player into a group of veteran AD&Ders destroys all hope of that, for the inexperienced player will be suppressed or repressed or both. If there's only one neophyte in your campaign, set up a special area for first level of experienced play, and likewise set aside some time for the individual to play alone. A couple of the experienced players can act the part of some mercenary men-at-arms, as well as the roles of various tradesmen and others the new player meets in the course of the play, and have a lot of fun in the bargain. But all actions, reactions, and decision-making will be left strictly up to the neophyte, with no hints or other help from the others. If several green participants are being integrated at the same time, the experienced players will not be needed to help out. But otherwise, the procedure is the same. After a few adventures, the newcomers will be seasoned a bit to be able to join in with major expeditions on occasion. When 3rd or 4th level has been reached, it's generally acceptable to allow full cooperation between the less experienced and veteran players, for at that point, the former should be able to contribute something to play and greatly benefit from adventuring with the old hands. Be careful not to allow magic items from other campaigns to come into yours with integrated player characters, as this could upset your milieu or at least give the player character something he or she never was meant to have. See non-standard magic items for details. Considered use of inherited or bestowed magic items is certainly urged with respect to integration of experienced players with new characters into a group of middle or high level characters. Similarly, if a neophyte is to be worked into the campaign as quickly as possible, yet allow the enjoyment of first adventuring to be unique to him or her, extra funds and a minor item or two should be included when the character is developed. The object of this is to keep the campaign viable, for it's almost certain that attrition will occur, and you will need to bring in new players as smoothly as possible in order to maintain your milieu, but you will also need to make the integration as enjoyable as possible for them and for your veteran players as well. I want to show you the image here, the little cartoon, because they're fun. It's a great new fantasy role-playing game. We pretend we're workers and students in an industrialized and technological society. Even D&D plays D&D. Hey, Danny, thanks for tuning in. Oh, man, you guys are chatting it up. I can't go through this all. We've already covered Gnome Flingers, greatest of all siegecraft. You remember reading this as a kid going, what the? It's all about craziness. It was years before you found out that this is kind of where it started. Seeing a whole house full of it back in like 82, 83. Heck yeah. You only use books for defense when the dice are being thrown at you. Nice. DC Blessed Bees. Thanks for tuning in. Intervention. Oh, wait, no. Multiple characters for a single player. There is no absolute prohibition regarding multiple characters belonging to a single player. Where it is deemed beneficial, the Dungeon Master may allow multiple characters as he or she sees fit. For instance, when the major character of a player is off on some special trip, he or she may be allowed to use a new character rather than playing the part of one of his or her character's henchmen. In fact, one player can have several characters provided he or she is a good, cooperating campaign participant capable of properly handling such multiple roles. In general, the multiple characters belonging to a single player should not be associates. One should not know information or be able to communicate knowledge which is peculiar to him or her to the other. One such character should not automatically regard another controlled by the same player as a friend. Money and or valuable items cannot be freely exchanged. In short, each such character must be played as an individual. As DM, you must be prepared to step in and take the part of one such character if the player is abusing the privilege of having multiple characters. Do so quickly and firmly, and the player will be likely to understand that you will brook no such foolishness, particularly if the character you take the persona of becomes hostile and aggressive to demands from the other. In campaigns where there are only a few players, or where only a few of the many players are really good players, it is likely that each good player will have several characters. Over the course of many games, some will be on reasonable, if not friendly, terms with others, some will avoid others, and some will actually be enemies. Explain to your players that you don't object to them having multiple characters if they're willing to play each as a separate and distinct individual, and that should be sufficient advice to any player capable of handling two or more characters. Intervention by deities. If the supernatural powers of the various outer planes could and would continually and constantly involve themselves in the affairs of the millions upon the prime material plane, they would not only be so busy as to get neither rest nor relaxation, but these deities would be virtually handling their own affairs and confronting each other regularly and often. Don't look at Dragonlance. If an entreaty for aid is heard 1 in 100, surely each and every deity in the multiverse would be as busy as a switchboard operator during some sort of natural disaster. Even giving each deity a nominal number of servants able to supply aid to desperate adventurers, the situation would be frenzied at best. Add to this the effects of various spells, commune, contact other plane, gate. It is obvious that intervention by a deity is no trifling matter, and it is not to be allowed on a whim, even if characters are in extremis. This is not to dictate that deities will never come to characters. Serving some deity is an integral part of AD&D. The mighty evil gods, demons, and devils are prone to appear when their name is spoken, provided they stand the possibility of gaining converts to their cause. The forces of good might send some powerful creature of like alignment to aid characters on a mission in their behalf. Certainly, in the case of some contest between opposing deities, all sorts of intervention will take place, but always so as not to cause the deities themselves to be forced into direct confrontation. Otherwise, the accumulation of hit points and the ever greater abilities and better saving throws of characters represents the aid supplied by supernatural forces. In most cases, therefore, you will have to determine the involvement of deities as you develop the scenario or series of scenarios of your campaign. In my own Greyhawk campaign, there have been 9 demigods, 3 demon lords, and a handful of Norse and other gods involved in the course of many years of play. Once or twice there's been divine intervention, and twice the powers of the infernal region have come at the mention of a certain name. Spur-of-the-moment intervention can be handled as follows. If the character is beseeching help has been exemplary in faithfulness, then allow a straight 10% chance that some creature will be sent to his or her aid if this is the first time the character has asked for help. If 0-0 is rolled, there's a percentage chance equal to the character's level of experience that the deity itself will come, and this chance is modified as follows. Each previous intervention on behalf of the character is minus 5%. Alignment behavioral only medial is minus 5%. Alignment behavior borderline is minus 10%. Direct confrontation with another deity required by the situation is minus 10%. Character opposing forces of diametrically opposed alignment is plus 1%. Character serving deity proximately through direct instructions or by means of some intermediary is plus 25%. Note, deities will not intervene on the planes when they are habitations of other deities, i.e. the outer planes. They will neither venture to involve themselves in the positive and negative material planes. Intervention in the elemental plane is subject to DM option based upon the population he or she is placed there. If there are elemental gods, the deities from the outer planes will not go there. Intervention occurs only on the prime material, astral, or ethereal planes in most cases. Demigods and gods. If a demigod or god is deprived of its material body by any means whatsoever, including being killed on the prime material plane, then it is sent back to its own particular plane. This process is similar to that of slaying the material form of some demon or devil. The ongoing campaign. While it might seem highly unlikely to those who have not been involved in fantasy adventure gaming for an extended period of time, after the flush of excitement wears off, perhaps a few months or a year, depending on the intensity of play, some participants will become bored and move to other gaming forms, returning to your campaign only occasionally. Shortly thereafter, even your most dedicated players will occasionally find the dungeon levels and wilderness castles grow stale, regardless of subtle differences and usual challenges. It is possible, however, for you to devise a campaign which will have a very minimal amount of participant attrition and enthusiast ennui, and it is not particularly difficult to do so. As has been mentioned already, the game must be neither too difficult to survive nor so easy as to offer little excitement or challenge. There must always be something desirable to gain, something important to lose, and the chance of having either happen. Furthermore, there must be some purpose to it all. There must be some backdrop against which adventures are carried out, and no matter how tenuous the strands, some web which connects the evil and good, the opposing powers, the rival states, and various peoples. This needs not be evident at first, but as play continues, hints should be given to players and their characters should become involved in the interaction and struggles between their vaster entities. Thus, characters begin at less than pawns, but as they progress in expertise, each eventually realizes that he or she is a meaningful, if lowly, piece in the cosmic game being conducted. Can we say the War of the Lands? When this occurs, players then have a dual purpose to their play. For not only will their playing characters and henchmen gain levels of experience, but their actions have meaning above and beyond that of personal aggrandizement. But if serious purpose is integral to a successful ongoing campaign, there must be moments of relief as well. Such counterplots can be lesser and different themes within the whole, whether some side dungeon or quest, a minor altercation between petty nobles, or whatever. Occasionally, pure fun scenarios can be conducted also. That is, moments of silliness and humor help to contrast with the grinding seriousness of a titanic struggle and relieve participants at the same time. After all, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is first and foremost a game, a pastime for fun and enjoyment. At times, the fun aspect must be stressed. Thus, in my Greyhawk campaign, I include an Alice in Wonderland level, and while it's a deadly place, those who have adventured through it have uniformly proclaimed it as great fun, because it is the antithesis of the campaign as a whole. Similarly, there are places where adventurers can journey to a land of pure Greek mythology, into the future where the island of King Kong awaits their pleasure, or through the multiverse to different planets, including Jack Vance's Planet of Adventure, where they hunt sequins in the Carabas, while deer and deer men hunt them. Of course, such areas represent a considerable investment in time and effort. Many of you will not have hours to spend creating these diversions, so it might seem that your campaign is doomed to eventual stagnation. Not so. The various prepared modules available commercially are ideal for such a sidelights to the whole of your game. In addition, there are many games which can be plugged into your AD&D campaign to serve as relief. After all is said and done, role-playing is role-playing, and the setting is not of paramount importance. The trick is to adapt one system to the other so as to enable continuity of the characters from AD&D into the other setting. This allows not only a refreshing change, but it poses new problems to participants and adds new factors to your campaign, new abilities, new weapons, etc. TSR has many games and rule systems, which can be used with this game to expand and invigorate your campaign. Space does not permit detailed explanation of how to do this with each and every possible system, but two readily lend themselves to both the spirit of AD&D and its systems: Boot Hill and Gamma World. 6 guns and sorcery. Whether or not you opt to have a time-space warp throw Boot Hill gunfighters into your AD&D world, or the adventurers from your fantasy milieu enter a Wild West setting, the conversions are the same. Converting and discovering character statistics is handled as follows. So basically what follows here, I'm just going to show you rather than illustrating it all. You have the character abilities and the Boot Hill character conversion to AD&D, and the AD&D character abilities to Boot Hill statistics. And basically, it's just as follows. Just stat to stat, all the way down, showing you how to do it. And then ultimately we get to hit die. Each Boot Hill character is equal to a second level fighter, 2d10 plus constitution bonus, if any. In addition, for each category of gunfighting experience a Boot Hill character has, add one additional level of fighter ability, i.e. add 1d10 plus applicable bonus. Armor class as in AD&D, so most Boot Hill characters will have armor class 10, no armor, at least initially. Saving throws. Boot Hill characters save at their fighter level as noted above under hit die. Fighting ability. Boot Hill characters have fighter level as noted above under hit die. Movement. Base unarmored movement for Boot Hill characters is 12 inches. Horses are all light. Turn sequence. Use the normal AD&D turn sequence unless both sides are using firearms, in which case use the Boot Hill turn sequence and first shot determination. When the AD&D turn sequence is used, then for initiative give +1 to Boot Hill characters who are unarmored and using firearms. Weapon range. Boot Hill inches convert to AD&D inches. Rate of firearms. Use the rate of fire shown in Boot Hill as the number of shots allowed per round, with no penalty for firing more than one shot. As the round is a full minute, you may opt to optionally allow double rate of fire with a -10% penalty for all shots fired above the standard rate of fire. The penalty being cumulative, i.e. 3 extra shots equals 30% penalty on each extra shot. Reloading rate equals segments per round so that any firearm can be completely reloaded in one round. And then, of course, we have some more charts. First shot determination, base number statistics with weapon speed factor, and adjustment for actual armor. And then, of course, hit determination modifier. And then we end up with wounds. Each hit causes damage as follows, several hits from the same weapon being computed separately. So let's look. A shotgun is 1 to 10 damage. Huh. Interesting. A Gatling gun is 1 through 8 damage? A Gatling gun, which shoots multiple rounds at once, but a shotgun does more damage. I don't know about that. I would modify that. Any circumstances not covered here can be extrapolated from this work and or Boot Hill. Referees might well find that some AD&D monsters and characters will prove interesting inhabitants for old mines or hidden valleys. Transferal of firearms to the AD&D campaign. Unless you desire to have gunpowder muddying the waters in your fantasy world, it is strongly urged that Boot Hill firearms be confined to specific areas, and when gunpowder is brought into the fantasy world, it becomes inert junk. Ergo, no clever alchemist can duplicate it. Likewise, dynamite and similar explosives become inert. We've had multiple times where Palin's son, actually, in the 5th Age, created dynamite and swore off to ever use it again, destroying the ingredients on how to do it. Gnomes have created cannons, so there is some version of combustibles out there that you can always add in. Mutants and magic. Readers of The Dragon might already be familiar with the concept of mixing science fantasy and heroic fantasy from reading my previous article about the adventures of a group of AD&D characters transported via a curse scroll to another continuum and ending up amidst the androids and mutants aboard the Starship Warden of Metamorphosis Alpha. Rather than go back over the ground again, it seems more profitable to discuss instead the many possibilities for the DM if he or she includes a gateway to a post-atomic war Earth, a la Gamma World. The two game systems are not alien, and interfacing them is not difficult. The challenges are very interesting for AD&D characters, and it might get one of the participants interested enough to get a separate Gamma World campaign going, thus giving all of you a new field for gaming, and more importantly, give you a break from DMing continually. So we're going to look at the character ability stats, much like the Boot Hill options. How many of you knew about Boot Hill and Gamma World? Let me know in the chat here. But you can see strength to strength. All the stats are pretty close there. Hit die, Gamma World characters should be allowed to retain their total based on their constitution, while AD&D characters should retain their hit die and bonus points gained by level. Armor class depends on whether the action is on a Gamma World or an AD&D world. Convert the armor classes by using the following statistics. So we've got no protection, shields only, furs, sheath armor, power plate, power attack, etc. Saving throws, as noted, Gamma World characters get no save against magic spells, although some mental mutations will modify this rule, see below. Likewise, AD&D characters are not allowed any radiation resistance. Poison saves should use the Gamma World matrix in a Gamma World area, otherwise the AD&D system is used. All other saving throws are as per AD&D, with Gamma World characters being considered as fighters. Those with mental mutations approximating spell abilities should give the benefit of saving as a 1st through 5th level magic user, if the saving throw category therefore is superior to that of fighters. Level of ability is based on the number of experience points the Gamma World character has earned, each step equaling 1 level, i.e. 0 to 2,999 is 1st level, 3,000 to 5,999 is 2nd level, 6,000 to 11,999 is 3rd level, 12,000 to 24,999 is 4th level, etc. Fighting ability. Gamma World characters in an AD&D world fight at the level indicated by their accumulated experience points. AD&D characters in a Gamma World campaign use the latter system of resolution to hit, regardless of level. Movement. Use the AD&D movement rates for characters as the scales are roughly equal. Turn sequence. Use AD&D, considering a search move as a round and a combat melee round as a segment. Weapon range. Outdoors, convert Gamma World meters to AD&D inches, the latter being in yards. In an underground setting, do not lower artifact weapons from Gamma World to AD&D inches. Triple their ranges to make up for ground scaled being reduced to 1/3 outdoor. Rate of fire, use AD&D, converting Gamma World combat melee turns to AD&D round segments when applicable. Initiative. Use the AD&D system. 2 hit bonuses allow all bonuses normal to characters in each game, except that Strength of Gamma World will give bonuses rather than Dexterity, which will improve armor class of Gamma World characters not wearing artifact protection. Damage, as shown in AD&D for all weapons except those found in Gamma World. In the latter case, damage is as shown in Gamma World. Fatigue. Ignore fatigue, or you may opt to use it only for Gamma World characters. Mental combat. Use AD&D Psionic ability as present. Use the Gamma World system, otherwise the AD&D Psionic combat system. Wisdom indicates mental strength. See also below. Spells. Magic users without their books will not be able to regain spells. Clerics in a Gamma World setting will be totally out of touch with their deity or deities, and so they will be unable to regain spells above 2nd level. Certain mental mutation powers resemble spells and vice versa. Mental defenselessness, for example, will allow any illusion, phantasm, or enchantment charm spell to function automatically against him, her, or it. A mental defense shield will give a bonus of +4 on saving throw dice rolls against the very same forms of attack and detect both mental powers and magic. Furthermore, characters with this ability would certainly have all 5 forms of psionic defenses mode to use. Mental control over physical state would enable override of hold spells and paralysis effects also. Mental control used against any AD&D creature would be regarded as a magic jar attempt. Likewise, certain AD&D spells would be very helpful against Gamma World characters, creatures, and weapons. Minor Globe of Invulnerability, for example, would prevent mental attack forms while approximate spells of up to 3rd level inclusive. Invulnerable ability to normal missiles would be effective against slug throwers, needlers, and fragmentation devices, as well as medieval technological missiles. A wall of force would stop many beams and rays as well, but blaster and torque grenades, basically disintegration weapons, would bring it down instantly. Whenever any case arises, use the examples and principles above to help you adjudicate the result. Artifacts. The Gamma World artifacts, except those with chemical bases which could be reproduced, will operate in the AD&D world, just as most magic items will function in a Gamma World setting. AD&D characters are limited in ability with regard to Gamma World artifacts to those operable under Chart A. Furthermore, they receive a +1 on their die rolls. Clerics and magic users with an intelligence of 15 or better may negate this restriction, and the penalty to dice rolls as well through practice and research. Each successful operation of an artifact allows a 10% cumulative chance of negating the penalty. Research on the object will allow a 1% cumulative chance of operating charts B and C items as follows. Each day of research on type B objects with a 100 gold piece per day expenditure. Each week of research on C objects with a 1,000 gold piece per week cost. Naturally, such study and research must be uninterrupted and undisturbed. Any artifact or magic items which are demonstrated for characters with usage instructions given will allow operation without the charts. AD&D characters will, however, use artifact weapons which differ greatly from weapons or magic items to which they are accustomed at 4 levels of experience lower than they normally would. Each successful use allows a 25% chance for such characters to increase in expertise, i.e. lose a penalty level, until they eventually reach normal ability. Such characters might also receive special consideration when handling firearms in a boot hill situation, being familiar with hand and shoulder arms and gaining a base 25 accuracy, for example, with a 50 maximum after practice. All right, Ryan, you played Boot Hill and Star Frontier. I played Star Frontiers a lot. That was a good one. I had fun. Yeah, this section of the book made the game make even less sense. Yeah, for sure. It's weird that they have a conversion section in the book for other games. Like, come on. What are we doing here? All right, we are on the next section here. Magical research. Creation of holy, unholy water. Only clerics, excluding druids, are able to prepare holy water or unholy water in case of evil clerics. As a 3rd level spell is involved, it requires a cleric of not less than 5th level of experience to manage to create such fluid. The process is as follows. A specially blessed cursed basin of fine workmanship and precious metal, copper, silver, electrum, gold, or platinum, must be fashioned for the cleric. This vessel must be engraved with the holy unholy symbols of the character's deity or deities, and it must be within a special repository of finely crafted and carefully worked rare wood with a base pedestal chest-like holder and lid, the whole being known as a font. The basin is placed within the font, and the cleric then casts the following spells in succession, while robed in formal vestments appropriate to his or her religious persuasion. Create water, purify food and drink, the water or its reverse, bless or its reverse, chant one full turn, and prayer. The amount of water created depends on the metal of the receptacle, and this is shown hereafter, along with suggested costs of the various parts of the font. Once created, the holy or unholy water cannot leave the font for more than a turn without losing its efficacy, unless it's placed within a specially blessed or cursed vial of crystal, either rock or special leaded glass. Each empty vial is worth 2 to 5 gold pieces. And let's just look at this really quick. You have your holy or unholy water receptacles, their capacity, base costs, and font cost. You may allow combination metal vessels with capacity according to the composition found by interpolation of the above capacity figures, i.e. a copper basin chased with silver and set with silver rim and handles would hold 8 vials and cost 50% of the copper vessels, plus 50% of the silver vessel price. Fonts and basins must be designed and constructed on special order, the process taking 4 to 10, 2d4 plus 2, weeks. Capacities are designed for game purposes so as to limit supplies of holy unholy water. They can be justified by the rationale that the deities find more precious metals more pleasing than those of lesser worth, so they are prone to grant more favor upon such offering vessels. Limit of creation. Holy water or unholy water may be made but once per week. The ritual takes a full day of prayers and meditation, followed by the actual ritual, followed by a need of not less than 8 hours of rest and repose. Only one holy or unholy water font per religious edifice is possible, as deities look upon anything other as unworthy and excessive. Defilement of fonts. If any non-believer blesses, curses an unholy or holy font, or uses less refined means such as execrating wastes onto a font, into a font, or excreting wastes into a font or basin. It's talking about taking a dump in your holy water font. The whole is absolutely desecrated, defiled, and unfit. So gross. It must be smelted down and remade in toto. The cost will be 20% to 50% of the normal figures shown above, and the process will take from 4 to 6 weeks. Note that either method of defilement requires actual contact with the font and its vessel. Any blessing or cursing from a distance will be absolutely ineffectual and wasted. What if you're like from a distance, you're like peeing in an arc, and it's like arcing up and over to the font? Relics may either defile by touch or prevent defilement by being encased within the font or receptacle at your option. Note regarding the drinking of holy water. Ingesting or bathing with holy water will have the beneficial effect of slowing the onset of lycanthropy or of becoming undead. For each vile soul used, the process is slowed by from 1 to 4 turns. This time delay is to be secretly determined and noted. Spell research. The Golden Fountain. Whether from the desire to create a new spell or from dissatisfaction with the lack of power, it is certain that the magic users of your campaign will eventually get around to inquiring about the procedures necessary to research and create a spell. Whether the spell is new or a listed spell which the character has been unable to locate during the course of his or her adventuring, the process is nearly the same. First, you must determine 2 salient facts. Is the character of sufficient intelligence to know another spell of that level? Is the desired spell of a level which the character's ability allows? Success demands positive replies to both questions. However, regardless of any negative responses, information will not be passed to the inquirer, for he or she should be able to discover such obstacles without recourse to the DM, and failure to do so indicates a lack of good judgment on the character's part, which will be evidenced by lack of success, only after fruitless research. That's pretty brutal. Determination of spell level. New spells might pose a small problem, as it will require some study on your part, but most of the burden can be shifted to the player. When desires to research a new spell is stated, inform the player that his or her character must carefully draft the details of the spell, i.e., you must have a typed copy of the spell in the same format as used in the player's handbook. Only when this is in your hands should you consider the power of the spell. Meanwhile, do not discuss the matter with the player, at least as a DM to player. It might be necessary to take the part of a sage and discuss the spell with the player character, for example, but that is entirely different. Once you have the details of the spell, compare it and contrast it with and to existing spells in order to determine its level and any modifications and additions you might find necessary in order to have it conform to known magic principles. Any super powerful, absolute killer or like spell must be thrown out immediately. Be certain to consider all of the ramifications of a spell and all of the descriptive wording to weed out spells which give the user some extraordinary, undeserved, and or unwarranted power. Anything better than 9th level spells, 7th level with respect to clerics, is in the category of impossible. Allow research, but it will always be useless. Check the range, duration, area of effect, and saving throw in particular to see that the spell has limits and restrictions. You might well wish to place more rigid restrictions than are shown. Similarly, you might add components and or lengthen casting time. After analysis of the spell and adjustments of its parameters, you will be in a position to assign it a level. If the spell is a variation of existing spell, with only minor differences, improvements, or extended effects, it will probably be only one level higher. If it is superior in 2 categories, place it 2 levels higher, and so forth. If it is a spell which is markedly different from all others, find the spell or spells which most closely resemble it, and then set its level according to the relative power of those covered in the book compared to the new spell. Spells with combination functions are at least equal in level to the sum of the spell functions plus a level, i.e., a spell which combined audible glamour with phantasmal force would be 6th level, a 2nd level plus a 3rd level plus 1 level for combining spells. Cost of research. The basic cost for spell research is only 200 gold pieces per spell level per week. Note, however, that this assumes that the researcher has a laboratory, or shrine in the case of a cleric, and library at hand, built up in gaining levels of experience and whatever other reasons are applicable. To the base cost must be added a weekly variable of 100 to 400 gold pieces per level of the spell, the variable accounting for additional materials needed. If no library of materials is owned by the researcher, the base cost increases by a factor of 10, 2,000 gold pieces per spell level per week. The researcher being assumed to be acquiring arcane texts and scrolls, thus creating a library. The player must establish the amount to be spent based on his or her appraisal of the level without assistance from the DM. Length of research. Initial preparations and research will consume a number of weeks equal to the level of the spell being researched. After this initial period, there exists a chance to achieve success, the chance being given weekly. Research, therefore, will always extend to a number of weeks equal to the level of the spell being researched, plus 1, i.e., a first level spell will take a minimum of 2 weeks research. Research expense accrues each and every week. There is no limit to the extension of research, although practically every minimal expenditure will result in successful research after the basic period plus 6 or so weeks in the average. Conditions under which spell research is possible. It is absolutely mandatory for the researcher to be of sound mind and body, and to have privacy and seclusion free from interruptions during the course of his or her spell study, i.e., no kender. This necessity precludes any adventuring or general interaction during the period of research. It requires about 8 hours per day of work, and only an hour or 2 per day can be spent doing other things, instructing underlings, dispersing funds, etc. Any interruption of research will be a setback. Each day of such hiatus will cause 1 full week of lost time. Also, as noted above, a library must be at hand, and this means that either the researcher must have his or her own stronghold or highly private quarters, or obtain them prior to beginning the project. If a personal library is not possessed, the research must be carried out on or in within 1 day's journey of a town or a city which the research materials can be obtained. Palanthas. Research materials. Acquisition of materials includes not only texts and scrolls, but also various components for the material needs of the spell. Written works cover the whole spectrum of knowledge, as the researcher must be aware of any and all aspects of the magic he or she wishes to use. Thus, works of history, geography, astrology, alchemy, etc. must be obtained. Chance of success. The base chance of success is 10% plus the intelligence score of the researcher, wisdom with respect to clerics, plus the level of the character researching the spell, minus twice the level of spell being researched. 10% plus 1 plus intelligence plus level minus 2 times spell equals the base chance for success. This base chance is modified upward in 10% increments by doubling of maximum base cost per level of the spell, 2,000 gold pieces. Thus, this is just crazy. Thus, an expenditure of base cost plus variable plus 2,000 gold pieces on a per spell level basis increases base chance from 10% to 20%, and 4,000 gold pieces per additional spell level increases base chance from 10% to 30%, and so on, to a maximum base chance of 50%, expenditure of 8,000 gold pieces per additional spell level. Insufficient expenditure means a 0 success percent chance. That's brutal. Determination of success. After the initial research period equal to the level of the spell in weeks, find the base chance, adjust by intelligence, character level, and spell level, and secretly roll percentile dice. Any score greater than the percentage of success chance indicated a negative result. Continue to check for successes each successive game week as long as research is uninterrupted and proper funding for the work continues. Remember, if a spell that is impossible for the character is being researched, this procedure remains constant, but there will never be success, and the dice roll is simply frosting. That's brutal. Eventually, even the most determined and least wise will begin to understand their aim is fruitless. Confidentiality of new spells. Once a player succeeds in researching a new spell, it is his or her character's alone. Only that character has the proper formula, and no mention of the spell should be made by you. Additional notes. There is no way that costs in money or time can be reduced. Likewise, conditions must be as set forth. Research materials must be obtained. It is possible to use another's facilities, but this will most certainly not reduce costs. Gathering a library assumes that the character is in a metropolitan area with libraries, booksellers, etc., from which copies can be obtained. If such is necessary, this must be done prior to the beginning of actual research, as it will take about 1 week per spell level to gather sufficient materials. The greater the level of the spell, the more esoteric and rare the tomes needed. All right, that is where we are going to stop. Shouldn't be easy to pull off with those powerful spells during the chaos of battle. Exactly. Like everything, I like this because it makes everything research dependent, time dependent, money dependent. It gives you reason to go on adventures, to gain funds, to search for components or books. It gives you reasons to build your own keep to deal with all of this, or a tower, you know? I mean, I really, really love this aspect of it because, again, while magic users are incredibly weak and frail at low levels, they are near godly at higher levels. And so it should be challenging because they're just going to get exponentially more powerful. So you have to have this as a sort of meter to that power. And anyone who's ever played a high-level magic user knows how badass they actually are. They get to be crazy at higher levels. All right, in any case, that is going to do it for this episode of Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Have you used mass combat in your AD&D games? Do you have any advice for handling troublesome PCs? And finally, do you bring gods into your campaigns? Feel free to email me at info@dealsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. Thank you to creator patron Aaron Hardy and developer patron Chris Androu. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slanjavar.